Thank you, Danielle, and welcome everyone to this afternoon and to the keynote speaker. My name is Leanne Martin. I am the Regional Forester for the Northern Region of the U.S. Forest Service stationed out in Missoula, Montana. And it is my privilege and honor to introduce your next speaker. I have known Angela Coleman for several years, worked with her for many years here in the Forest Service through various positions, and it is going to be a delight for you to be able to visit with Angela and listen and have an opportunity to learn more about her and her wonderful journey through her professional life and who she is as a person. A little bit about Angela and her background. Angela serves currently as Associate Chief of the U.S. Forest Service. So she is the second person in charge of an agency of over 30,000 strong. She came to this through a variety of different backgrounds. She previously was the Chief of Staff for former chiefs. She started in journalism as a professional journalist. She's worked in public affairs and worked throughout the country on behalf of all of you as American citizens for the public lands that we're honored to manage on your behalf. And I would say that Angela has a great passion for public service. It is about the people, it is about the land, and it is about working for you. She also has many other passions. One of them is college football. She is an avid Alabama fan, Roll Tide. She also has a very strong faith and is about family and people. So as you listen to her, you will hear many of her values come out just naturally. You will hear about who she is and how she serves all of you. And you'll hear about how, as a woman, she came out professionally. So without further delay, I want to welcome her to the stage and remind everyone to please use the question cards on your table so you can have a dialogue with Angela through the process. So Angela, it is all yours.
Leanne's no slouch. She is incredible in her own right. It is an absolute gift for me to be here with you today. Thank you for the invitation to join you. And it's good to be back in Boise, Idaho. It's been 30 years since I came here. I came here in 1994 as a public information officer at the Interagency Fire Center. I stayed here for a month. If you remember, that was the year. It's bittersweet because it was the year that we lost 13 firefighters, 13 men and women. So it is an honor to be back to honor their memory as well as to join this incredible room of women. You guys look amazing. A few months ago, I had an opportunity to bring together a group of Asian American early career women in the Forest Service. With our history and struggles of creating a workplace where everyone feels valued and respected, we have to check in to see how people are actually experiencing us. So it is my practice every now and again as individuals and as groups to bring people together just to tell me how they're experiencing Forest Service work environment. And so when I brought these women together virtually, they came with incredible backgrounds and talents, and I was so excited to hear them. And I actually said, well, one of my questions is, what is it that you want me to know that you'd never tell me if I didn't ask? They said, well, we don't all speak Chinese. You know, I should have known that. But I made sure they knew that this was a place where they could say exactly how they were feeling. And so there was a woman, a very talented young woman named Hannah. And Hannah had been with the Forest Service a very short period of time, but she came to us through the Pathways program, a student program where you get converted into a job after you completed your Pathways experience. And so she did. She got converted, and they moved her to one of our units. And you know, we're located across the country in remote areas most of the time. We do have some city units, but by and large, the majority of our employees employees are field-based people. And so we sent Hannah to Wyoming. And on Hannah's first day of work, no one spoke to her. She showed up at the office, and for several hours, no one welcomed her or acted like they even knew she was coming. And then Hannah told me that in her first 2 years, people referred to her as a diversity employee. How about that in the Forest Service? And this is not long ago. And she said they made sure that she understood that she didn't belong, that she was just kind of passing through to her next job. She received racial slurs and had one employee that she worked with regularly who regularly would say sexually explicit things to her. She was sexually harassed, to be very frank about that. And Hannah didn't want to be the one to tell. She wanted to belong, so she didn't want to be that person to tell. And so she endured this for 2 years. And they would go out into the woods at times, and Hannah said everybody had a walkie-talkie. And they would call each other and say, hey, you're getting out of the woods, time to come back in. Nobody called Hannah. So Hannah got to a point where she was mentally stressed, and she told someone, and the agency responded. Hannah did not have safe space. And that's what I want to talk to us about today, especially us, because a lot of us are living in work environments where we don't feel safe. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my own journey. I haven't been enlightened my entire time in the Forest Service, so my journey also tracks alongside the Forest Service's growth. But first, I'd like you to listen to Simon Sinek. Simon is someone who is a guru of leadership, and he has a good take on what it means to lead safe space.
You know, in the military, they give medals to people who are willing to sacrifice themselves so that others may gain. In business, we give bonuses to people who are willing to sacrifice others so that we may gain. Right? So I asked myself, where do people like this come from? And my initial conclusion was that they're just better people. That's why they're attracted to the military. These better people are attracted to this concept of service. But that's completely wrong. What I learned is that it's the environment. And if you get the environment right, every single one of us has the capacity to do these remarkable things. And more importantly, others have that capacity too. I've had the great honor of getting to meet some of these who we would call heroes, who've put themselves and put their lives at risk to save others. And I asked them, why would you do it? Why did you do it? And they all say the same thing, because they would have done it for me. It's this deep sense of trust and cooperation. So trust and cooperation are really important here. The problem with concepts of trust and cooperation is that they are feelings, they're not instructions. I can't simply say to you, trust me, and you will. I can't simply instruct two people to cooperate, and they will. It's not how it works. It's a feeling. So where does that feeling come from? If you go back 50,000 years to the Paleolithic era, to the early days of Homo sapien, what we find is that the world was filled with danger. All of these forces working very, very hard to kill us. Nothing personal. Whether it was the weather, lack of resources, maybe a saber-toothed tiger, all of these things working to reduce our lifespan. And so we evolved into social animals, where we lived together and worked together in what I call a circle of safety, inside the tribe, where we felt like we belong. And when we felt safe amongst our own, the natural reaction was trust and cooperation. There are inherent benefits to this. It means I can fall asleep at night and trust that someone from within my tribe will watch for danger. If we don't trust each other, if I don't trust you, that means you won't watch for danger. Bad system of survival. The modern day is exactly the same thing. The world is filled with danger, things that are trying to frustrate our lives or reduce our success, reduce our opportunity for success. It could be the ups and downs of an economy, the uncertainty of the stock market. It could be a new technology that renders your business model obsolete overnight. Or it could be your competition that is sometimes trying to kill you. It's sometimes trying to put you out of business, but at the very minimum, is working hard to frustrate your growth and steal your business from you. We have no control over these forces. These are a constant, and they're not going away. The only variable are the conditions inside the organization. And that's where leadership matters, because it's the leader that sets the tone. When a leader makes the choice to put the safety and lives of the people inside the organization first, to sacrifice their comforts and sacrifice the tangible results so that the people remain and feel safe and feel like they belong, remarkable things happen.
So you remember what it feels like when you feel safe. And I remember what it felt like when it feels safe. And so I want to describe what I'm talking about when I say safe space. You're at peace, meaning that conflict is something that isn't something that's natural to the work environment or the place where you're living in your home. You can be you, authentically you. There's unconditional acceptance of all the talents and gifts, downsides and upsides of you. You're welcomed, you're included, you are fearless. You take a few risks, you're bold, and you're confident about that. You're open to new things. You can be vulnerable and honest about your insecurities. When you come to work and you're not feeling great, you can share that with someone and say, I don't know, I'm not feeling great today, and get compassion for that. You're willing to talk about tough topics, the undiscussables, the elephants in the room. And here's a good one. You feel comfortable getting feedback to coach you, to grow you, because you know where it's coming from. It's coming from a place where you know they want you to be your very best. And it's a place where you're willing to share the highs and the lows of your life. That is safe space. That little girl on the screen is me at 6 years old. Every kid my age had that little dress with the big giant collar, right? And look, you see, it's school picture day, so my hair is, I got one long and one short little curl. And I have no teeth, but I am bold. I am grinning from end to end. But I wanted to remind myself of when I was a kid and when I felt safe. And there are two women in my life that immediately come to mind. And the part that they're women, the fact that they're women is not a small thing, and we'll talk about that as I share this story. The first, no surprise, I bet, to most of you, is my mumsy, my mother. My mom's was an early childhood educator. And Mums noticed really early that I was verbose and just frankly wild, but she knew that boldness had something in it. And so she gave me a lot of feedback. You know, you can imagine what that must have felt like. I got a lot of feedback, but I got a lot of affirmation, and I got unconditional love. She loved Angie, whether I was good or bad, and she did it in a home that was violent. So safe space meant something even more, because I had a father who at times would have these temper tirades, but she made it clear that I was safe with her. And Mumsy did it at great sacrifice to herself at times. And then there was Helen Johnson, my 11th grade English teacher and drama teacher. And Helen also noticed what I was good at. And she coached it, which meant she had to give me a lot of feedback. I'm from the Southeast, I'm from Alabama, Roll Tide. And and in that role, I was learning how to be a good dramatist, to, learn how to do the right tempos and enunciate words properly and in different dialects. And she actually would correct the way I would say words at times. Like, I remember the one the most that she talked to me about all the time. She says, Angela, it's not strength, it's strength. And I went, oh, but I still say strength when I'm with the right crowd, but I know the difference. And so the point was, I never felt shame when Helen would coach me. I never felt that there was something wrong with me. I just knew she loved me and she wanted me to be my very best. And so I loved Helen Johnson. But those were two women who were critical to my feeling of what safe space, they checked all the boxes. But there always is a time, like Hannah, where your safe space gets violated. And the memory that it comes to me the most is when I was a senior in high school. Now, we weren't a rich family. My mom's made a lot of my clothes, and she had made for me this beautiful purple dress. She sewed it for me. And because I had grown to be well known in the high school as a good speaker, I was asked to lead an assembly. Now, about my school, I was in Smith Station, Alabama, which is a small school, and I was the first full generation to be in an integrated high school, and the school was predominantly white. And so we had seemingly made it work for me. I loved my high school experience, and I thought I had friends who were supporting me. In fact, in this incident, when I was leading this high school assembly, there was a group of guys who I thought were my friends. They were all white. I hung out with the football team, no surprise there. And I had a friend that was in that group who was also part of I was on this team that you do the trivial, on TV where they ask the questions, and I was on that team. Keep your judgments to yourselves. But I was on that team, and so was one of the members in this group. I remember them to this day, their faces, because as I was speaking to a room full of students and faculty and the whole student body, I heard this mumbling, grape ape, grape ape, grape ape, grape ape. They were talking about me. Wounds like that take a long time to heal. I haven't been back to a high school event since I graduated. And I graduated very popular in that class because I thought they were my friends. So they violated my safe space. And so I went on, left high school, and I rarely go back to my high school days. And I don't stay in contact with my high school friends. The wounds are deep. So when Hannah told me her story, I kind of understood that that was going to take time for her to heal. You would have thought that somebody like me, after having experienced that, and after having two great examples of what it means to lead and provide and be a good example for others forming good, safe space, that I'd do the same when I got into the professional world. I did not. I did the opposite. I tailored my professional life early on to the myths that I thought made you successful in the world. I did not believe that you could bring your personal life into your business. And I made sure the people who worked with and for me didn't do that either. I didn't make space for people worrying about their children. And in fact, I believed very much in those myths around suck it up and keep calm and never let them see you sweat. I really built my early career based on those principles because I thought that's what made you strong. I thought crying or showing any sense of emotion in the workplace was a sign of weakness. And in the world that I was in, starting first as being a news reporter, that's what I thought was successful. I'm a tough reporter, and you don't get to me with highly emotionally charged stories. And it made me do things that today I regret. I remember driving up to a battered women, me of all people, a battered women's shelter to get a story in the evening when women were afraid for their lives, that the person that was causing their harm was going to come find them. But I was being a tough reporter, and I was trying to get the story. And I put their lives at risk and made them fear for their lives and their children who were there for shelter. I did that as a news reporter, getting the story. I remember calling a woman whose husband had been found dead in his car. And I called her because some drug paraphernalia had been found in her car. So here this woman is sobbing on the phone as I am, the tough reporter, asking her questions about her husband's drug history. And I brought that little drama right into the Forest Service. And I was matriculating up to be a leader in the Forest Service. And one memory stands out as a communications director. I had a wonderfully talented young lady who, God help her, she's still my friend today. I got a clue. She had just come out of a divorce. She was a single mom, and she wanted to advance into another job. And I'm like, well, at this time in your life, perhaps this can't be done. And so she gave up and went another path because I didn't welcome her challenge into the workplace and become her ally to help us figure it out so she could continue to grow. And this happened for a while until two events changed me and began to transform me into the leader that I'm still working to become. The first, as everybody knows, we had the memory of 9/11 on Monday. And that brings back a lot of memories for me. I was in Atlanta at the time. And for the first time when that happened, everybody's safe space got violated. And when I looked into the face of my executives, as well as the face of the employees who were looking to me to make meaning out of planes going into buildings and people jumping out of windows, I noticed work suddenly became very, very unimportant. We sent people home that day, and the sense of bewilderment about the attack on our country, as people of this country, we were just citizens, common humanity who were trying to figure out why someone was attacking us. I looked at that very differently as a leader. I remember President Bush had us go to a house of worship, any house of worship, and have that day of prayer. I'll never forget that. I have never felt more American than that moment when we sat in a church that I didn't worship in. It was a Presbyterian church. I was Baptist. And I was sitting next to my boss, an executive, holding hands about our country. And I started to realize it's about this. But the big moment, the big move happened when I hired a 41-year-old young man to be our press secretary for the southern region of the Forest Service. He was the press officer. He came to us very talented, had a background similar to mine. His name was Bruce Kenzel. Well, within a few months of Bruce becoming a part of our team, Bruce learned he had late-stage colon cancer. And he found out that he was terminal. He was going to die. And I said, well, Bruce, how do you want to spend these few months? And I said to him, I want you to know whatever you feel like doing in our unit, do. And we're here for you to build space and support for you and your new wife. He was a newlywed. And so we, as a team, I asked our team, can we feed them every week? Make sure that they have meals? We fed them every week. His wife had a lot of allergies, so you can imagine Southern people frying everything, what that was like. But we fed them every week. I literally sat with Bruce while he went through chemo just to talk, not about work. Only we talked about work when he felt like talking about work. And Bruce worked because this was a place where he felt valued. He felt like he belonged. So he extraordinarily worked up to 3 days before he died. Bruce was on the job. And his family realized, because his family was several states away, so they couldn't provide the support that this young couple needed. And so he knew about what we were doing to take care of them, visiting them, providing for their needs and supporting them. And so they invited me and my deputy director to stand beside Bruce's bed while he took his final breaths. And I realized this is what leadership is. At the same time, the Forest Service itself was going through its own growing pains for transformation and creating safe space for all of our employees. And the Forest Service has a checkered past. We do. We have a history where it's a paramilitary, very hierarchical organization, and it's male-dominated, even to this day. And I'm proud of where we are today, but we had to have a time of reckoning in our organization. And it was about people of color, and it was about women. And in particular here, it was about women firefighters and how they were being treated. The Forest Service had adopted a culture of safety where we named safety as our value. Where's the Forest Service table? Okay, hi y'all, it's good to see you. So this story is our story. It is our story. And we had noise in the system from women filing EEO complaints about how they were treated and trying to figure out what safety culture meant when it went beyond physical safety. Well, it all came to a head in 2017 when the Me Too movement came through. Well, the Forest Service became front and center in that movement. And we ended up on Dateline on NBC. Y'all remember? And we ended up on the front page of PBS News, on the front screen of PBS News. And our chief, who had a relationship that was inappropriate with a subordinate, had to resign. And that was the time when the agency owned up to our past. And we literally scheduled with a new chief, a woman by the name of Victoria Christensen. I was chief of staff, and we had an associate chief named Lenise Lago, and we got together with our National Leadership Council as joined together to make a move to stop the silence in our agency, the ability to talk about the undiscussable. And we literally stood down the agency for several days and had every unit talk about harassment and discrimination and name hard truths about our organization. From that, we revamped our code of behavior and named diversity as a core value along with safety, and made the commitment to work toward creating a workplace where everyone could feel valued and respected. We're still on that journey today, but nothing sped it up faster than the coronavirus. When we left to go telework, when the coronavirus shut down our in-office presence and we had to work as a team to ensure that employees were safe, it sped up what it meant to invite all of the individual into the workplace, to put work in its place. It was rare that we talked about work without talking about whether or not someone had a child taken care of, or a parent taken care of, or that that person felt healthy. We made it clear that we didn't have the answers, and we were very vulnerable about that. And our tone completely changed when it came to inviting all of people into the workplace. Everything they were dealing with was a part of our world. And empathy was a word that we said regularly. And I think we had to kick that up a notch to compassion, where you actually join the person in helping them resolve their challenge. You don't resolve it, but you let them know you are their supporter in resolving it. And in fact, I have with me a quick message. We did a lot of our talk to employees over the virtual environment, and we would literally just share from our heart about what we were all facing at that time. And I'm going to read it to you. First it says, wait 3 seconds because you talk too fast. Go slow. It says, hi everyone, so good to be with you. So much has changed for us in just 10 weeks. And I bet when you originally signed up for Amazon Prime, you weren't exactly doing it with this in mind. My daily routine has really changed thanks to this pandemic. It now includes at my house checking for deliveries and disinfecting boxes. I'm finding joy in the small things, like being able to find toilet paper or a Lysol wipe. But one thing that hasn't changed is the special people who make up the Forest Service. Big hearts in our agency. Thank you for the work and service you're continuing to do. It's fueling my engine. You've been simply inspiring over the last few weeks, and I'm so grateful to work with people like you. I appreciate your courage, your generosity, your innovation, your service. You live our values well. I'm learning that humankind is our business. The common welfare, charity, benevolence, and mercy. Now, this is Forest Service talking to our employees. At this time, our humanity connects us. Thank you for caring for one another. Thanks for contributing to your communities and your fellow employees. I notice your service doesn't stop when you turn off your computers and shut down your computers and take off your uniforms. Thank you for the work you're continuing to do. But I'm also concerned about your well-being. I hope you're taking care of yourselves. This is going to impact us for a very long time. This is a tough time, and a lot of us are struggling, including me. So I name EAP our Employee Assistance Program. We're looking forward to the coming weeks. Alongside our service of value and our value of interdependence and safety will play prominently. We will need all of you to commit to follow the guidance to protect yourselves, care about each other and your children and your families and your friends. And lastly, I said, remember, your voice matters. That was a completely new tone for the Forest Service that we were sharing. And the pandemic taught us that to include discussions about mental health and mental resiliency, and they are continuing to be part of our journey. And in fact, last year we held a mental health summit for firefighters in our agency. Now, we've got a long way to go in our journey, but we're recognizing that this is a leadership trait that's not going away. It needs to be grown. It needs to be built in our organization as a part of our institution. And it is not weakness. It is a sign of strength. And in the post-pandemic world, it's needed more than ever. I did a look at the impact of the pandemic on our world. And if you look at the numbers, you know that all of us need safe space. So what does it mean as a leader to create safe space? Well, the first is showing compassion. That means not just empathy to connect with a person's pain, but a signal that I also want to see you get help, whatever that means. It also means embracing your own vulnerability, being willing to share your own struggles, and being willing for people to see that you too need help and support and interconnectedness. It means affirming and valuing the whole person, their perspectives, their backgrounds, their gifts, their blind sides, their dark sides, their things that they're not proud of. Being inclusive of all of that. I'm proud of our agency in this realm because we recently, even in our employee assistance program, added mental health to the contract so that people can get the kind of counseling they need. It also is a place where we as leaders have to convene people and talk about the undiscussables, the elephants in the room. When George Floyd died, we literally stopped and had a conversation with our National Leadership Councils, and we asked them, how do you feel watching a Black man get killed on the street? What did you feel? What do you think? And every one of us, we never would have done that, but every one of those leaders engaged very vulnerably to talk about a very tough topic for our country. When Uvalde happened, I happened to be leading a meeting. We were planning for another meeting where we would bring in leaders from all over the country to talk about some other agency issues. It was the day that Uvalde happened, and when I saw on the virtual format, I looked at the faces of every person who was participating in that discussion, and I'm like, they're not here. Their parents, their uncles, their aunts. I said, y'all, we're not going to talk about the plan. I want you to tell me what you're thinking about your children. Needless to say, there was a lot of Kleenex. There were a lot of worried moms who needed to talk about whether or not they would see their kid after dropping them off at school when they should be safe. Well, we had to build space for them to talk about an undiscussable, unheard of in the Forest Service before this time. And then the big piece is empowering others. We can't do this work by ourselves, and the creation of a safe space is not something I can lead by myself. I need it, you need it, so I have to do my part, and everybody else has to do theirs. And what's interesting about leading and creating safe space is we, women, historically, are built for this. This is what we do. And for many years, we were taught these kind of skills were soft skills. They're strengths. They unleash power in your workplace. I can tell you that after we had the Uvalde talk, when we did get to the agenda piece, it was much more powerful the way that agenda came together, because we were going to engage people on tough topics. And it was only when you got your heart in it and your head in it that you can do extraordinary things. And we women, we have a history of this. Men can grow this as well, and there are many men who do have it. But historically, this is in us. We're inclusive. We're empathetic. We are very flexible. Many, especially moms and dads. We're multitaskers. Lunch over here, drive them to work, we are multitaskers. We're big dreamers, strong communicators. We love to handle crises. We don't love to do it, but we do it regularly. We encourage free thinking. We build teamwork and community. We found out with climate change, for example, that the people who really dig in around climate change are women, because they're the holders of the communities. And this is worldwide. They're the ones that are worrying about their children's ability to live in this world and future generations. So building community is one of our super strengths. And we are also motivated by our challenges. We certainly have enough of them. So what do you get for building a safe place for all people, all employees? You get innovation. You get engagement, real, authentic engagement. You get retention. And in the Forest Service, that is a challenge. We recruit a lot of people, but we lose a lot of people because of the quality of our work environment needing attention. But in this safe space, people stay. We are much more, you get inclusivity, and you're much more attuned to everybody's voice being in the room. It's rare that a single idea wins out. It's usually a collection of ideas. And when you think about the complex challenges that we have in America and on public lands, you need the collective ideas, and you need to be a convener of that. So having inclusivity in your workplace helps your agency to do extraordinary things. It also, for once and for all, brings harmony to work and life. I'm not over here the associate chief and over here Aunt Angela. I'm all of that. I'm a church member. I am a member of my community. I'm an aunt. I'm a daughter. I'm a sister, as well as the associate chief of the agency. I'm an African American woman, as well as the associate chief of the agency. Increased cooperation. For so many years, and I was part of it, leadership meant that you left the personal problems at home. Leadership meant we didn't talk about what was really going on in your life, and we certainly didn't invite it into the workplace. And in fact, many leaders were revered because they led despite being human, or so they thought. But today, I've realized after my own personal experience, after the coronavirus, and after the needs of our country and our world, that we have to lead because of our humanity. In fact, we have to work on being superhuman. That's what unlocks the power of our collective work together, our common humanity. And like I said, I can't do it by myself. And you can't do it by yourself. Everybody has to do their part. And just think, if we do that well, what we unlock, people will bring their very best, even at their very worst, even when they're facing death, if they feel safe in their workplace, in their home life, in their communities, in their society. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you, Angela, for that wonderful, wonderful talk. I want to remind the audience members that if you have a question for Angela, you should write it on the question card and raise it up, and one of our wonderful volunteers will bring it up here, and I will try and get to as many of these as we can with the time that we have left. Angela, I have a question. The wonderful thing of doing this is that I get to go first. My questions get at the front of the line. So I wanted to ask you a little bit. You beautifully chronicled your own journey and the journey of the Forest Service and the ways these huge societal events have helped to trigger change. And I'm curious to know, in both of those parallel journeys, what's next? What can we do to make some of those changes without a terrorist attack or a pandemic? How can we maybe move those journeys along in sync? And what do you see as the big impact things in the next few years?
I think the big thing is we as a community need to grow the skills as not soft skills. They're leadership skills. And if we're going to be successful in facing up to the complexities that we see, we need everybody engaged. We don't need people holding back. So growing those skills very intentionally, practicing those skills very intentionally, that is important. And I think in organizations, building practices that create, I didn't use this word, but it is exactly what I'm talking about, psychological safety in your workplace. We've got to build procedures and practices that do that as a routine. You know, you can't have one leader who believes it and no one else is doing it. You literally have to be very intentional in building those skills and practices within our agency. We have practices for physical safety, do we not, team? We do not have institutional practices around psychological safety where you ask a person, do you feel safe in this workplace? Or when we're doing a task, do you feel like your team supports, where you are? Where are you today before you go dig a fire line? Where are your emotions? And I know that we're practicing some of that in our fire organization right now. It's called 3 Cubed, right? So that, I think, as an institution, creates a system where psychological safety gets practiced. Sorry, long answer.
No, that's a wonderful answer. Thank you. Thank you. So one of our audience members would like to know what suggestions you have for making people feel safe in an inherently dangerous work environment like wildland firefighting or law enforcement, especially in a work culture that awards those leadership myths, be tough or shut up.
I think, again, it's literally being intentional about building the space and making sure that people understand that it is not a stigma to have a mental health. In fact, one mental health challenge, one person, a doctor, we just hired a doctor at the agency whose background is in mental health and behavioral health. I know, yes, clap. That's part of the institutionalization. He said, Angela, you might go your entire life without cancer or a heart attack. He said, but at some point in every person's life, they are going to have a mental crisis. And that includes law enforcement and firefighters, and making it okay for them to have that and building space to let them know that has nothing to do with their strength as a firefighter or their strength as a public safety officer. It's part of life. And this agency not only builds space for us to know that's going on inside of them, and we support that, but we also want to let them know we have compassion around it to build to find resources that can help them. And we literally have hired in our EAP, Employee Assistance Program, contract mental health counselors aimed at our law enforcement and firefighting community specifically, because it's still such a stigma in that world. So we've got to break down that stigma, and most importantly in our agency, break down silence. When people speak up, hear them and know that what they have to say is valuable, and that it doesn't take away from them and their gifts that they bring and contribute to this agency. And our job is to make sure they can do both and be whole as a person.
Thank you.
You think I care about this a little bit?
A little bit. It comes through, absolutely. So first, thank you, Angela, for your passion and for sharing your vulnerability with us. And then we have sort of two parallel strains here. We have a number of people that are asking, how do we approach conversations with our leaders about creating safe space? And also, I have supportive leaders. How does that trickle down to the crew or to the people on the ground that maybe aren't as supportive of the safe space?
I think you have to talk about it from the standpoint of what does the organization get for having safe space. The ability to have innovation, the ability for people to do extraordinary things, to hear Simon Sinek speak. I think everyone, if you're trying to talk to your leader, you just say, I believe until we can create a space where everybody feels valued and feel like they belong and feel like their voice matters, that it is affecting our ability to get our mission done. One of the big breakthroughs for the Forest Service when we first talked about a safety culture in our agency was that the mission and someone coming home safely was all together. The mission was not complete until everyone returns home safely. Well, that has to include psychological safety too. And so I think you have to connect the business bottom line to safe space.
Yes, thank you. You've mentioned several times about the power and importance of maintaining vulnerability. In situations where in the workplace that vulnerability has been weaponized or used against you or your concerns not addressed, how do you recommend someone maintain their willingness to be vulnerable while also ensuring their own well-being?
That's a tough one because our culture is still in an evolutionary phase. I think the best example I can be is to show my vulnerability. And that is not easy for someone like me. And to admit that it's not easy to do. I also think that we as leaders have to encourage one another to be vulnerable about who we are and our own struggles, and yet we're still able to do our leadership role. And then I have seen the power of vulnerability. I had a situation just back in June where we were out on a tour of a forest in California in the wake of the Caldor fire. That means something to us in our world, but it was one of the largest fires in California history. And there happened to be a district ranger who was a woman who had a child, and she was just taking the job as the ranger when she moved to that part of the forest and the fire came through. Well, she's still traumatized by that. And so when we had the tour, she was on the agenda to speak about that. And naturally, all of that came back and the tears started to flow. And that is when my job as an Associate Chief of the Forest Service is to say, this is the kind of leader we're trying to build in the agency. I affirmed her with all the crowd looking. I said she literally put on a clinic for what leaders do in these situations. And do you have any idea what it unlocks for the employees that look to her for leadership? She could be a strong leader. And her strength was in showing her vulnerability about what she was dealing with as a young mom and trying to take care of a child while leading our work in suppressing this fire and being a part of that community and sharing with the community what we were up to. And it opens the door for her employees to share what's happening with them. And so can you imagine when they're responding, they can calculate who's ready and who is not. That those who are ready can step up and be interdependent with those who are not, and we hold each other through that. That's what leadership is in these situations. No one's going to come with it every day. That's not possible with us being whole people. So my job is to affirm people who demonstrate that kind of vulnerability and then to practice it and make sure people understand it's a sign of strength.
So this audience member would like to know, what should I do if there's no safe space? Do I speak up? Do I change jobs? What if it becomes worse and it's a job that I love to do?
Wow. All of the above. You have to choose what is best for you. There's only one you, and your health and your mental resiliency and wellness is important, and we all need safe space. And if you feel like it's a place where there's fertility in that, then by all means, go for it. But if it's not, then you do have to make hard choices. In my time with the agency, there came a time where somebody like me, news journalist, African-American woman from a background that wasn't natural resource management, was told, this is not the place for you. Luckily, there were other people in the agency who thought differently. And so I was faced with the choice of doing what you're thinking of doing, and that is, do I leave? Oh yeah, I was sending out the resumes. But luckily, someone else believed in other possibilities and made sure they were a leader in the organization. They made sure I knew it. There is no question that we have to be allies for one another. And this was a man. And when I say that, allies include men. They are part of this. And there are lots of believers in our organization who understand the strength of these leadership qualities, and they're using it. And so finding allies, people who believe. And if you don't have that in the organization, then you do have to make some choices. I was lucky. There were plenty of men and women who believed differently than what I received as my future. And thankfully they did, because I wouldn't be here without them believing.
Thank you. A number of people have asked about sort of the mobility issue. So I think this is a really interesting phrasing of it. Yesterday, Deborah Lamort spoke to the value of staying in one place so you can build relationships and see the fruits of your labor. However, we were often told in the agency that we must to physically move up, physically move. How do we nurture employees being whole humans when they're pressured to move away from their lives and their units that they've already invested so much in?
It sounds like the story of Hannah that I told originally when she left her Pathways program and then she had to move cross country. I think giving people lots of options and letting people understand that there are lots of paths to leadership in the Forest Service, in my organization, in your organization, than mobility. I moved 9 times, and it was tough. Think about my first move was from the great state of Alabama to Virginia, and then from Virginia to Arkansas, from Arkansas to South Carolina, from South Carolina, and on and on and on until I ended up in California. And that took a traumatic toll, and it really took a toll when my parents started to have health, they had health conditions that obviously were leading to death. And I had to try to figure out how am I a good daughter, and as well as try to do my job. And luckily, this agency is evolving, and really the paths to leadership come through different ways. And coronavirus helped us a lot there too, because we now have a lot of options around virtual, around remote work, and around as well as mobility. But there are certain jobs that really are critical to our community relationships, but there is not a singular path to leadership. Let me be the example. I'm the most unconventional of all the leaders in the agency because I'm not a forester. And so we're slowly but surely opening all the pathways to leadership in the organization. But I will say mobility still is very much one of those tough decisions and tough conversations that we have to have, but it's a much more intentional conversation that we have about what jobs require some breadth of experience in different places and which do not, and not all of them, you can get your experience for leadership in different ways, not necessarily that way. So we're figuring that out. There's a lot of light at the end of that tunnel. There are lots of opportunities for leadership through different ways in the agency today.
There's a few specific questions about efforts to target both women moving up in leadership positions within fire in particular, and also targeting specific cultural teams for fighting fire, like Native Americans or teams of other groups of people of color, and protecting their psychological safety. Can you talk to either of those pathways and what the agency is doing there?
Well, I think we're doing a lot. The Forest Service is really, and I'm really proud of how the Forest Service is reconciling our past with tribes, and a recognition and honor of their connection to these lands, their knowledge and expertise of these lands. I'm proud of the work that we're doing there to build trusting relationships, and that's hard when you consider our history. And so we are seeing much more space given to honor the practices, traditions, and culture of our tribal nations in this country, more so than I have ever seen, and I'm very proud of that. But we have a long way to go when it comes to institutionalizing that recognition and honor of that past. And that goes for all people, people who are in marginalized communities and underrepresented communities. That's still a challenge for the Forest Service, and making sure that those cultures are safe when we put them in a particular part of the agency, and make sure that they have a network that ensures their success. That's still part of the work that we have to do. We're improving in some respects, and in other respects we've got a lot more systematic work to do, because there are in parts of the country we do it really well, and there are other parts it's very uneven is the point. So there's a recognition by the agency, but we have work to do.
and those are such challenges for a nationwide agency like that. I wish I could ask the 75 other questions that I'm holding in my hand here. I had the benefit of having lunch with Angela, and I'd like to conclude with a question about her book. And as she sums up the work that she's done and her amazing autobiography, what would you call that book, and when can we look for it?
It's going to be a ways off. I'm still our associate chief. I still have responsibilities. I would say we're still a few years away, but I'm already thinking about the wonderful experience I've had with the Forest Service. I truly love our agency. I love our mission because it's not about today. It's about future generations and the people who are going to live on these lands, but it's also about people. And whatever I write in the future is going to be about leading people and what that means when it comes to creating a place where everybody feels valued, everybody feels they belong, and every person's voice matters. And that's not from me, that's from Simon Sinek, but I use it a lot because it's my guiding principle for how I lead today.
There are so many young women and men that need to read that book. So thank you.
Whenever
Please join
it
me.
is.
Yes.
Thank you very much.